was born on the land that was his grandfather's homestead. Okay, so if my grandfather homesteaded, he took out his homestead in 1884, and this would be out a little bit north and west of, is that right? North and east of Seattle. Okay, even a little north and east of Redmond, which is where Microsoft's headquarters has been now for a good while. So, at any rate, he was born on that land. And I was born in Seattle in a hospital in this modern day, 1937. But at any rate, I was raised on that same farm. Our farm was a homestead farm. Now, I've read in literature about famous names from the past in Europe where they had what amounted to a homestead farm. It provided for everybody, the family that owned it, and also the people that worked there. You had to have orchard for fruits. You had to have vegetable garden for corn and beans and whatsoevers. You had to have land for animals, because if you were now we raised beef because we had considerable acreage. We had neighbors that didn't have acreage. They raised pork, and we swapped them beef for pork. Okay, so you had to have the animals that are going to provide you with meat. When we were having the cattle, we raised our own calves. Okay, so.
And this was a dairy farm, right?
This was a dairy farm, so we had milk. We had chickens for eggs. So here were some of the basic necessities to sustain life. We always planted enough veggies, not to just eat all summer long. What about that? We always put up corn and string beans.
What else?
Bush beans of all kinds. Yellow ones, and we did wax beans, and anyway, we pole beans and bush beans, okay? And always enough for the summer and to let go to seed, because in those days we didn't save seed, and had to know how to do that, and had to have a way of putting it up and labeling it and saving them till spring, okay? When the corn started, we had to be feeling the cob and sometimes peek inside to see if it was yellow yet or not. We would just hope to find enough for dinner. After a while, we couldn't eat it fast enough for what was ripening, and so we knew it was time to plan, maybe 2 weeks ahead or something, to plan the day we were going to freeze. There was nothing other work to do. Cucumbers, because we made pickles of every kind. The little one went for sweets, the bigger ones went for dills, and so we had to have dill in the garden to put in the jars with the dill, with the cucumbers that were going to be dill pickles. We had to have certain things to go with it, of course. We grew cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and cabbage.
Broccoli?
And broccoli. But
what about tomatoes?
yes, tomatoes. Oh my gosh. But Washington wasn't a good place. Tomatoes didn't get ripe. When we were going to have the first frost, you're out there picking every green tomato off of the vines, because if they're going to freeze, they're going to be rotten anyway. And so all the windowsills in the house are filled with green tomatoes.
What other vegetables did you have?
You're waiting for them to. Well, squash always, and pumpkins. All kinds of squash. Big squash. I loved the little acorn squash. They were always my favorite. Might have been because I just liked the look of the shape. Deep, deep green with their little scalloped eggs. Anyway, carrots and beets. Carrots you can leave, I don't know, we didn't leave carrots in the ground. We left parsnips in the ground. And you could pull them up all winter long and they were still good. Freezing them didn't spoil them. In the orchard we had a variety of apple trees. We had cherry trees. Separate from regular cherry trees, we had pie cherry trees. We had Roylands and Bings. We had Gravensteins and Kings and Wealthies and Delicious, and the winter apple was called a banana apple. It was hard as a rock, but it was gonna still be there when it was almost spring. And we had pears and we had plums. We had filberts, which was an old-fashioned name of hazelnuts, and we had a walnut tree that was huge. We had strawberries, we had raspberries, we had locanberries, we had boysenberries, we had young berries, we had currants. Currants are good because they have a lot of pectin to help you with your jellies. Radishes, little green onions, carrots, beets, kohlrabi, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli.
Asparagus?
Yes, asparagus. I love asparagus. And I love sweet potatoes so much. And I wanted us to grow sweet potatoes. Finally, my mom and dad let me plant a couple of sweet potatoes, cut them in bits, make sure that each piece is big enough that it has something to grow on while it's sprouting. I don't think I ever brought any sweet potatoes. Our growing season was not long enough. Just like it was not long enough to grow ripe tomatoes, but barely, okay? When my grandfather started out, they had to grow everything they were going to eat. They had chickens. They had geese because they plucked the feathers to save for down for making pillows. Come on. We had sheep. I can remember when they had to shear them by hand. Sheep, well, the clippers, the blades were horizontal. My grandmother on my mom's side had a spinning wheel.
Did she spin yarn or did she spin thread?
She spun yarn. And the favorite thing, my dad depended upon my grandma, my mom's grandma. His prize present at Christmas time was new hand-spun, hand-knit socks. That was his Christmas present he looked forward to every year from my grandma Isaacs. I can remember, and this would have been in the same house that was the Homestead house that Grandpa built. The living room was very, very long. It had a sunroom in the
Not too much
north end.
detail.
And they had the quilt frame set up in this sunroom. And I remember playing underneath the quilt frame when my Grandma Sykes and my mom were quilting. One of the things, and you grow up this way, so you grow up automatically doing this. You have to be ready for whatever's happening. I mean, if you have a dog bringing the cows up, you have to be aware of where that dog is and what that dog is doing. And if a cow decides to stop and eat grass and all the whole batch of 30 other cows behind her are getting stopped because she's not moving, I mean, you have to be looking around to see what's going on that might be related to what you're doing and what you're being responsible for. You can't have your brain in la-la land. The thing is, whether it's something with the animals or something that you're helping someone else with, there's always a coordination. You've got to be aware of what the objective is of what's going on. In other words, you're thinking all the time about whatever, because you're helping with whatever is being done. And it doesn't mean how old you are. Maybe you're just carrying something from your mother and taking it to your father who's doing something where he's laying on his back under a piece of machinery. Whatever. I mean, you are working in reality. You're living in reality all of the time. And what's going on is real, and it's life around you, life as it is. It's the same with life on a farm, and it doesn't matter if you are 5 years old, you're still old enough to do something. And you're with people who are doing things, and you are observing and learning. You're not You don't be a dummy. You don't be a dummy. I don't care if you're 7 years old, you're not a dummy. And you don't act like a dummy because you're paying attention and learning by what other people are doing. And they're depending on you to at least stay out of their way, or at least hold their hand. And it's part of what's happening. And you are part of what's happening.
Well, and if your dad's under a truck?
Yes, this has happened many times. There was one time in my life when Leo wasn't old enough to do anything yet, because I was already 9 when he was born, remember? And so my dad would be underneath a huge old diesel Caterpillar tractor with a blade and everything on it. And he'd be doing something, and so help me, the wrenches were this long sometimes with a gappy thing on them, that big. And I was handing him tools. Well, I at least, if I didn't know the name of it, although by the time I was 9, I knew the names of lots of things in terms of tools and things. I at least had to know if he was going to describe it to me. I had to look as fast as I could at the line of tools he had laid out for me and grab the right one and get it to him. Because you want to get finished with your work. And as soon as this work is done, there's another job to do. And so it's not lackadaisical, and you're not being an irresponsible little lally-gagging thing who's sitting over there either painting her nails or chewing them. You're busy. You're paying attention. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
It does.
it's reality. But life was real. You lived to be able to keep, you did the things you did to be able to keep living. Okay?
Hey folks, like, subscribe, tell your friends. It really does help, and it helps the channel grow. It helps us get higher in the search engines. And if you do feel like you can, please donate and help us out on the journey and help us restore this boat. We have a Patreon link. We also have a PayPal link on our website.